Subscribe to Storylab. Now, let's begin this one. Ray Cooper had learned to sleep light during 22 years in Delta Force. Even now, 3 years into retirement, the slightest anomaly pulled him from rest. The phone's vibration at 2:47 p.m. wasn't slight. It was Freddy's school during class hours. "Mr. Cooper?" The woman's voice trembled. "This is Erica Pace, Freddy's English teacher. There's been an incident. Your son is being transported to County General." Ray was already moving, grabbing his keys. "What happened?" "The football team. Several players." "Mr. Cooper, it's serious." The paramedics said possible skull fracture. The drive took 11 minutes. Should have taken 20. Ray's hand stayed steady on the wheel, but his mind was already cataloging threats, calculating responses, running scenarios he'd hoped never to use on American soil. County General's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as he found the ICU. Through the window, Freddy lay motionless, 17 years old and barely recognizable. Tubes ran from his arms. A ventilator breathed for him. The left side of his face had swollen to twice its normal size, purple and black. The bandages wrapped around his skull were spotted with red. "Mr. Cooper?" A nurse approached, her badge read Kathy Davenport. "Your son is stable, but the next 48 hours are critical." The CT scan showed a depressed skull fracture. "Dr. Marsh is the best neurosurgeon we have." "How did this happen?" Ray's voice came out flat, controlled. Davenport glanced at the police officer standing near the nurse's station. "Detective Platt is handling the investigation. But from what I understand, it was multiple assailants. The injuries are extensive. Broken ribs, internal bruising, the skull fracture. Mr. Cooper, your son was beaten very badly." Ray sat by Freddy's bed for 3 hours. His son had been quiet growing up, preferring books to sports, art to aggression. Smart kid, kind kid, the kind who helped elderly neighbors with their groceries and volunteered at the animal shelter. Last week they'd gone fishing, and Freddy had talked about maybe studying veterinary medicine. Now, he might not wake up. At 6 p.m., Detective Leon Platt finally came by. Mid-40s, tired eyes, the look of a man who'd seen too much. "Mr. Cooper, I need to ask some questions about your son. Any enemies? Conflicts at school?" "Freddy doesn't make enemies." Platt nodded slowly. "The initial report says 7 members of the varsity football team cornered him in the west stairwell after 4th period. Witnesses heard the commotion, but by the time security arrived, your son was unconscious. The boys claim it was just roughhousing that got out of hand. Their story is Freddy started it. My son weighs 140 pounds. You're telling me he started a fight with 7 football players?" "I'm telling you what they're saying. Their lawyers are already involved. The school is calling it an unfortunate accident." Platt leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Between us, I've got 3 witnesses who say otherwise. But they're scared kids, and the football program brings in a lot of money for that school. The players' families have connections." Ray absorbed this information, filing it away. Names of the players. Platt hesitated, then pulled out his notebook. Darren Foster, Eric Orozco, Benny Gray, Gary Gaines, Everett Patrick, Ivan Christensen, and Colin Marsh. All seniors, all being recruited by Division I schools. Foster's father owns half the commercial real estate in town. Orozco's dad is a city councilman. You see how this goes? "I see." That night, Freddy coded twice. The second time, they barely brought him back. Ray stood outside the ICU, watching doctors and nurses swarm his son's bed, and felt something cold settle in his chest. Not rage. Rage was hot, chaotic, useless. This was something else. This was the feeling he'd had in Kandahar, when his team had walked into that compound. This was operational clarity. By morning, Freddy was stable again, but still unconscious. Ray left the hospital at dawn and drove to the school. Riverside High was a sprawling campus, new athletic facilities gleaming in the early sun. The football field had stadium seating for 3,000. The scoreboard was digital, probably cost more than most people's houses. Principal Blake Lowe's office was on the 2nd floor, decorated with photos of championship teams. Lowe himself was 50-something, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of tan that came from golf courses and country clubs. He looked up when Ray entered, and something flickered in his eyes, annoyance, maybe, or calculation. "Mr. Cooper." I was expecting you'd come by. Terrible situation. Truly terrible. My son has a fractured skull. Yes, and we're all praying for his recovery. The boys involved have been suspended pending investigation. We take these matters very seriously. 7 players. All bigger than Freddy. All athletes. They beat him until he stopped moving, then kept going. Lowe spread his hands. From what I understand, it was a fight that escalated. Teenage boys, hormones, these things happen. Nobody wanted this outcome. These things happen, Ray repeated. My son is on a ventilator. I understand you're upset, Mr. Cooper. Any parent would be. But we need to let the authorities handle this. The police are investigating. What about the school's investigation? We have security footage, witness statements. It's being reviewed. Lowe leaned back in his leather chair. Let me be frank with you. These boys have futures ahead of them. Scholarships, opportunities. What happened was tragic, but ruining 7 young lives won't help your son. Ray stood. Lowe watched him, a slight smile playing at his lips. That's it? You're not going to make threats? Get angry? Lowe's smile widened. What are you going to do, soldier boy? This isn't whatever third world hellhole you used to operate in. This is America. We have laws, procedures. Those boys have rights, and their families have lawyers. Good ones. Ray looked at him for a long moment. Soldier boy, he said quietly. That's original. He left without another word. Ray spent the next 24 hours at the hospital. Freddy remained unconscious but stable. Dr. Colin Marsh, the neurosurgeon, explained that the brain swelling needed to subside before they could fully assess the damage. There was a chance of permanent injury. There was a chance Freddy might not wake up at all. On the second night, Ray sat in the hospital cafeteria, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt plastic. His phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. Your kid should have known his place. Maybe this teaches you military trash to stay in your lane. Ray deleted the message. Then, he opened his laptop. 22 years in Delta Force taught you many things. Most people thought it was about kicking doors and shooting bad guys. That was part of it. But the real skill was intelligence gathering, surveillance, operational planning, finding people who didn't want to be found, learning their patterns, their weaknesses, their secrets. Darren Foster, age 18, quarterback. Father, Edgar Foster, real estate developer. Mother, Jessie Foster, socialite. Lived in a gated community on the east side. Foster Sr. had 2 DUIs swept under the rug in the past 5 years. Junior had 3 assault complaints filed against him, all mysteriously dropped. His younger sister Candy had been in rehab twice. Eric Orozco, age 17, linebacker. Father, Kirk Orozco, city councilman running for state senate. Mother, Sonia Orozco, ran a nonprofit that seemed to spend most of its donations on administrative costs. Eric had been arrested last year for possession with intent to distribute. The charges vanished. His social media was full of videos showing off weapons and drugs. Benny Gray, age 18, defensive end. Father, Al Gray, owned a construction company that had won every major municipal contract for the past decade, despite multiple safety violations. Benny had put 2 kids in the hospital before Freddy. Both families had settled out of court. The list went on. Gary Gaines, son of a police sergeant. Everett Patrick, whose mother sat on the school board. Ivan Christensen and Colin Marsh, whose fathers were both attorneys at the same firm that represented the school district. It wasn't just corruption. It was a system, a network of privilege and protection. These boys had never faced consequences because their parents ensured they never would. They'd learned they could do anything to anyone, and someone would clean up the mess. Ray made notes. Addresses, schedules, security systems, vehicles, routines. Old habits coming back effortlessly. By 3 a.m., he had a complete operational picture. The question wasn't how. Delta Force had taught him 100 ways to neutralize threats. The question was proportion, precision. These were kids, even if they were monsters. But their parents had created them, enabled them, protected them. The rot went deeper than 7 teenagers. At 4 a.m., Freddy's vitals spiked. Ray sprinted to the ICU, arriving just as nurses stabilized him. Davenport caught his arm in the hallway. He's okay. His brain activity increased. That's actually a good sign. He might be starting to wake up. Ray nodded, but his hands were shaking. He'd faced Taliban fighters, had bombs dropped danger close to his position, had cleared buildings full of hostiles. None of it compared to watching his son fight for life against injuries that never should have happened. He went back to his laptop, started making a different kind of list. The next morning, Ray visited the Riverside gym at 6 a.m. Darren Foster was there, as predicted. Kid was benching 225, his spotters cheering him on. He wore a shirt that said, "Undefeated." When he saw Ray, he smirked. "Hey, you're that kid's dad, right? Hope he's doing better. Accidents happen, you know?" Ray watched him. Foster's spotters, other football players, including Eric Orozco and Benny Gray, moved closer. Protective, threatening. "We were just messing around," Foster continued. "Your kid got mouthy. Things escalated. He'll be fine. Maybe he learned not to run his mouth to people better than him." "People better than him," Ray repeated. "Yeah, people with futures. People who matter." Foster racked the weights, stood up. He was 6'2", 220, all muscle and arrogance. "My dad's lawyers say we're covered. Juvenile stuff, worst case some community service. We'll be in college next year while your kid's still eating through a tube." Orozco laughed. Gray chest bumped Foster. They were performing, Ray realized, showing off with a handful of other gym-goers who were watching nervously. Ray left without responding. As he walked to his truck, he noticed the security cameras covering the parking lot. Noticed the gym attendant making a phone call, watching him leave. Word would spread fast the victim's father had shown up, had been scared off, knew his place. Good. Let them think that. Ray spent day 3 gathering intelligence. He drove past homes, observed routines, tracked movements. All 7 players maintained their normal schedules. School, practice, parties. Why wouldn't they? They were untouchable. That evening, he visited Principal Lowe's house. Not to confront him, just to observe. Lowe lived in a sprawling ranch house, 3 cars in the driveway, a boat in the garage. Through the windows, Ray could see Lowe drinking wine, with a woman who wasn't his wife, based on the photos Ray had seen in his office. Ray photographed everything. Then he moved on. By day 4, Freddy's eyes had opened briefly. He couldn't speak, the ventilator prevented that, but he squeezed Ray's hand when asked. The doctors called it promising. Ray called it a reason to be very, very careful about what came next. Detective Platt visited that afternoon. "The district attorney is reviewing the case. Between you and me, it's not looking good. The boys' stories align. Their lawyers are claiming self-defense, and the school's security footage mysteriously malfunctioned during the critical period." Convenient. "Yeah." Platt looked tired. "I've been a cop for 23 years. I know how this goes. These kids will walk. Their families will make sure of it. I'm sorry, Mr. Cooper. I really am. But unless something changes dramatically, justice isn't coming through official channels." Ray nodded. "I understand. I hope you're not thinking of doing something stupid. I saw your military record. I know what you're capable of. But this is a small town with powerful people. You can't win this fight. Can I?" Platt held his gaze. "Whatever you're thinking, don't. For your son's sake, if nothing else. He needs his father." After Platt left, Ray returned to Freddy's bedside. His son's eyes were open again, more alert. The nurse said they might try removing the ventilator tomorrow if he continued improving. "Hey, champ," Ray said softly. "You're gonna be okay. I promise." Freddy's eyes moved to Ray's face. Something in them. Recognition, fear, question. Ray squeezed his hand. "Don't worry about anything. Just focus on getting better. Everything else is handled." That night, 72 hours after the attack, the first of the 7 players ended up in the hospital. Darren Foster was found unconscious in his car at 11 p.m., parked behind the abandoned strip mall on Highway 9. Both hands were broken, small bones shattered, precisely targeted. His right knee had been hyperextended until the ligaments tore. No weapon had been used. The damage was systematic, professional, the kind that spoke of extensive hand-to-hand combat training. The police found no witnesses, no security footage, no evidence. Foster would recover, but his football career was over. His scholarship offers were rescinded within hours. 6 hours later, Eric Orozco was discovered in similar condition at the public park. Unconscious, same injuries. Hands, knee, Precise trauma that would heal but leave him permanently unable to play contact sports. By noon the next day, Benny Gray was found, then Gary Gaines, then Everett Patrick, Ivan Christensen, and Colin Marsh. All within 72 hours. All with identical injuries. All unable to remember what happened. They reported being approached by someone, then nothing until they woke up in agony. None of them could identify their attacker. The police had no leads. The boys were terrified, their parents outraged, and the entire town was buzzing with theories. Ray spent those 3 days at the hospital with Freddy, who was improving steadily. The ventilator came out. Freddy could speak, though his head still hurt. The doctors were optimistic now, no permanent brain damage, though recovery would take time. Detective Platt visited Ray on the morning of day 6. Where were you the past 72 hours? Here. With my son. Ask any nurse. I have. They confirm you barely left his side. Platt studied him. 7 boys hospitalized with identical injuries. Professional work. Military-grade combat training. And you've been here the whole time, in front of witnesses. Sounds like a mystery. Mr. Cooper. My son nearly died because 7 teenagers decided to beat him unconscious for fun. Now those same teenagers are injured, and suddenly everyone cares about justice. Interesting. Platt said nothing for a long moment. The parents are pushing hard for an investigation. They want answers. I hope they get them. Nobody should get away with violence. After Platt left, Ray checked his phone. Multiple news alerts about the Riverside 7, as the media was calling them. Speculation about gang activity, targeted revenge, vigilante justice. The story was spreading beyond the small town. More importantly, 7 angry fathers were organizing. Ray had expected this. Counted on it, actually. The trap was almost set. On day 7, Freddy was moved out of ICU. His skull fracture was healing. The swelling had gone down significantly, and while he'd need physical therapy and monitoring, the doctors declared him out of immediate danger. Ray helped him into a regular room, watching his son move carefully, still in pain, but alive. Alive. Dad, Freddy said that evening, his voice still weak. I heard the nurses talking. Those boys who hurt me. Don't worry about them. They're saying you did it, but you've been here. I saw you. Ray smiled. Exactly. I've been here, taking care of you. That's all that matters. Freddy studied his father's face, something like understanding dawning. When I was unconscious, I could hear you sometimes. You promised everything would be okay. It will be. Those guys, they've done this before, Dad. To other kids. Everyone's too scared to say anything because their families run everything. Darren Foster held me down while the others. Freddy's voice cracked. They were laughing, said I was a nobody, that they could do whatever they wanted. Ray felt that cold clarity again. They were wrong. The school won't do anything. Principal Lowe called Mom yesterday, said we should consider accepting a settlement to help with medical bills. Like we're the ones who should be grateful. Your mother's coming back tomorrow? Ray's ex-wife Allison Ryan lived 2 states away, had remarried, visited twice a year. They divorced when Freddy was 10, kept things civil but distant. Yeah, she's worried. Angry too. But at the wrong people. She said we should take the money and move on, not cause trouble. That's not happening. Freddy managed a small smile. I didn't think so. That night, while Freddy slept, Ray received a text from an unknown number. We know it was you. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m., your address. Come alone. Ray texted back. I'll be there. He spent the next day preparing. First, he visited a storage unit across town that he'd rented under a false name. Inside were items he'd kept from his service day's equipment that technically should have been turned in, but had mysteriously remained in his possession. Medical supplies, communications gear, surveillance tools, and weapons, though he doubted he'd need those. The fathers coming to his house weren't trained. They were angry, entitled men who'd never faced real danger, coming to intimidate someone they thought was a threat. They had no idea what a real threat looked like. Next, he stopped by his house, a modest 3-bedroom in an older neighborhood. He checked the security cameras he'd installed years ago, made sure they were recording to the cloud, backed up to 3 separate servers. Checked angles, lighting, audio quality. Then, he visited Erica Pace, Freddy's English teacher. She lived alone in a small apartment, and when she opened the door, her eyes widened with recognition and something like fear. Mr. Cooper. I. How's Freddy? Getting better. I wanted to thank you for calling me that day. For caring enough to make sure I knew. She nodded slowly. He's a good kid. What happened to him was. She trailed off. Glanced behind Ray, as if expecting to see someone. Are you okay? I heard about those boys, and people are saying. I've been at the hospital the entire time. Witnesses can confirm. Right. Of course. She hesitated. Mr. Cooper. Freddy talked to me sometimes. About the bullying. I tried to report it, but Principal Lowe said boys will be boys, that Freddy needed to toughen up. I should have done more. I should have. You did what you could in a corrupt system. That's not on you. Tears filled her eyes. Those boys have tormented half the school. Everyone's too scared to speak up. Their families have too much power. Had. Ray corrected quietly. Past tense. He left her apartment and headed back to the hospital. Spent the evening with Freddy, talking about nothing important: movies, fishing, plans for when he was fully recovered. Normal father-son conversation. Around 8 p.m., he kissed Freddy's forehead and headed home. The trap was set. Now he just had to spring it. Ray arrived at his house at 8:45 p.m. The street was quiet, suburban calm. He parked in the driveway, left the lights off inside, and waited. At 8:57 p.m., 3 vehicles pulled up: 2 trucks and an SUV. 7 men emerged, carrying baseball bats, crowbars, anger written across their faces. Edgar Foster led the group. Big man, 6'4", probably 60, but still solid. Behind him came Kirk Orozco, Al Gray, James Gaines, Roland Patrick, Ivan Christensen Sr., and Ken Marsh. The fathers of the 7 boys. All of them successful, powerful men in this town. All of them unaccustomed to consequences. Ray opened his front door before they could knock. Stepped out onto the porch, hands visible, empty. The security cameras hidden in the eaves, in the doorbell, in the porch light captured everything. Gentlemen. Foster stepped forward, bat resting on his shoulder. You son of a bitch. You think you can cripple our boys and get away with it? I've been at the hospital. Multiple witnesses. Bullshit, Orozco snarled. We know it was you. Who else has the training to do that kind of damage? Maybe someone who decided your sons needed to learn about consequences. Novel concept, I know. Gray swung his bat, stopping inches from Ray's face. You think you're funny? You think we're scared of some washed-up soldier? We own this town. The police, the courts, everything. We'll bury you. Like you buried every other person your sons hurt? Ray's voice stayed level. How many kids have they put in the hospital? How many families have you paid off or threatened into silence? Those were accidents, Marsh said. Boys playing rough. Your kid was weak, couldn't take it. My son has a fractured skull. 7 players beat him unconscious and kept going. That's not playing rough. That's attempted murder. That's a lie, Patrick snapped. Your boy started it. Couldn't finish it. Our sons were defending themselves. 7 against 1. Elite athletes against a kid who weighs 140 pounds. Some defense. Foster raised his bat. We didn't come here to argue. We came to make sure you understand your position. You've hurt our sons, destroyed their futures. Now we're going to return the favor. And when we're done, you'll wish you'd taken the settlement and kept your mouth shut. A settlement, Ray repeated. For my son nearly dying because your kids are sociopaths you raised to believe they're above the law. That was the offer. Money to shut up and go away. That's right. But now? Now you get nothing but pain. Foster looked at the other fathers. Teach this military trash what happens when you mess with our families. They moved forward as a group, weapons raised. Ray didn't move, didn't flinch. Just watched them come, counting steps, calculating angles. When Foster swung the bat at Ray's head, Ray wasn't there anymore. 22 years of combat training meant reading body language, anticipating attacks, moving before the enemy completed their action. The bat whistled through empty air. Ray's hand snapped out, struck Foster's extended elbow, and the bat clattered to the ground as Foster screamed, arm hyperextended, ligaments torn. Orozco charged next, crowbar raised. Ray sidestepped, drove his fist into Orozco's solar plexus, followed with a knee to the face as Orozco doubled over. The crowbar fell. Orozco hit the ground, gasping. Gray and Gaines came together, coordinating better than the others. Ray backpedaled off the porch, giving himself room. Gray swung high, Gaines low. Ray jumped the low swing, caught Gray's bat mid-arc, yanked it from his grip, and used the momentum to spin and crack the bat across Gaines' knee. The joint buckled the wrong way. Gaines collapsed, howling. Patrick, Christensen, and Marsh hesitated, suddenly realizing they'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. These were men used to boardrooms and golf courses, not violence. They'd brought weapons to a fight against someone who'd spent 2 decades training for war. Ray didn't wait for them to recover their courage. He closed the distance to Patrick, struck precisely at pressure points, nerve clusters in the neck, the inside of the arm, the floating ribs. Patrick went down, conscious but unable to move. Christensen swung wildly with his crowbar. Ray caught his wrist, applied pressure, felt bones grind together. The crowbar dropped. Ray swept Christensen's legs, put him face first on the ground, knee in his back. Marsh backed away, hands raised. Wait! Wait! This is assault. We'll have you arrested. Ray looked at him. You came to my home with weapons. 7 against 1. That's recorded. He pointed at the cameras. Every angle. Audio too. You confessed to obstruction of justice, admitted your sons attacked mine, threatened me with violence, then initiated assault. All on video. Backed up to 3 servers. Already sent to my lawyer with instructions to release if anything happens to me or my son. The men on the ground groaned. Foster clutched his arm. Orozco's face was a mask of blood. Gaines couldn't put weight on his leg. Patrick gasped for air. Christensen lay still under Ray's knee. Here's what's going to happen. Ray continued, voice calm. You're going to wait right here while I call the police. You're going to be arrested for assault, criminal threatening, conspiracy. Your sons are going to be charged with aggravated assault of a minor. The school district is going to be sued into oblivion for covering it up. Principal Lowe is going to lose his job when the evidence of his complicity goes public. And all of you, every single one of you, are going to learn that actions have consequences. You can't do this. Gray wheezed from the ground. We have lawyers, connections. So do I. Difference is, I have evidence and the moral high ground. You have corruption and a history of enabling violent criminals you raised as sons. Marsh tried one more time, voice shaking. This won't work. We'll fight this. You'll lose. Ray interrupted. Because I spent 22 years fighting people far more dangerous than 7 entitled men who've never been told no. I've been shot at, bombed, ambushed by professionals, and I'm still here. You really think you scare me? Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. Ray had arranged that too, a neighbor he'd briefed earlier. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Detective Platt arrived first, took in the scene, 7 men on the ground, various injuries, weapons scattered around. Ray standing calmly with his phone out showing camera footage. Mr. Cooper. Detective. These men came to my home, armed with weapons, and attacked me. It's all recorded. Self-defense, clearly documented. Platt looked at the footage, at the groaning men, at Ray's unblemished appearance. Something like satisfaction crossed his face. I'll need statements from everyone. Medical attention for the injured. This is going to be a long night. I've got time. More police arrived. Ambulances too. The 7 fathers were treated, arrested, read their rights. They shouted threats, promised lawsuits, demanded their lawyers. None of it mattered. The evidence was overwhelming. As they were being loaded into police cars, Foster locked eyes with Ray. This isn't over. Yes, Ray said. It is. The next 72 hours were chaos. The arrests made regional news, 7 prominent citizens charged with assault. The footage Ray had recorded went viral, showing the men confessing to covering up their son's crimes before attacking Ray. Public opinion shifted violently against them. The district attorney, seeing both clear evidence and political opportunity, moved fast. The 7 teenage players were charged as adults with aggravated assault. Their previous victims' families who'd been paid off or threatened into silence started coming forward. 15 other incidents emerged, a pattern of violence the families had systematically suppressed. Principal Lowe was placed on administrative leave as the school board launched an investigation. Emails surfaced showing he'd deliberately ignored complaints, destroyed evidence, and coordinated with the families to protect the football program. He resigned within a week to avoid being fired, his pension in jeopardy. The school district faced multiple lawsuits. The football program was suspended. Several school board members resigned, including Everett Patrick's mother. The entire corrupt structure began collapsing under the weight of evidence and public outrage. Ray spent those days with Freddy, who was recovering steadily. His son was stronger now, the physical damage healing. But there was something else, a quiet strength Ray recognized from his own experience with trauma. Freddy had survived something terrible and come out the other side. "Dad," Freddy said on day 10, "everyone's saying you're a hero, that you took down the whole system. I just documented what happened and defended myself when attacked. You planned it. All of it. You knew they'd come after you, knew they'd confess on camera, knew exactly how to beat them." Ray met his son's eyes. "I knew entitled men who've never faced consequences would make predictable mistakes when someone finally stood up to them. You could have killed them. Those 7 guys, their dads. You could have done permanent damage. I could have. But that's not justice. That's revenge. Justice is making sure they face the legal consequences they've avoided for years. Justice is exposing a corrupt system. Justice is giving their other victims the courage to come forward." Freddy smiled slightly. "And revenge? Revenge is making sure those 7 boys will never play football again. Making sure their dads lost everything: reputation, power, influence. Making sure everyone knows what they did and who they really are. Maybe there's a little revenge in there too." On day 12, Freddy was discharged from the hospital. He still needed physical therapy, still had headaches, but he was home, alive, safe. That evening, while Freddy slept in his own bed for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, Ray sat on the porch. The street was quiet, no threats lurking, no enemies approaching. His phone buzzed a message from Detective Platt. The DA formally charged all 7 players and all 7 fathers. "Strong cases on all counts. Thought you'd want to know. Also thought you should know I'm glad you were at the hospital those 3 nights. Whoever did put those boys in the hospital, they did this town a favor." Ray deleted the message. Let Platt have his theories. Another message, this one from Erica Pace. "Freddy's classmates are talking more openly now about the bullying. 3 other families are filing complaints. Thank you for giving them courage." Then one from a number he didn't recognize. "You don't know me, but my son was hurt by Darren Foster 2 years ago. We took a settlement and kept quiet. Not anymore. We're filing charges. Thank you." Messages kept coming throughout the night. Stories of violence, of systematic abuse, of a community that had looked the other way because the families involved had power. Now that power was broken, and people were speaking up. Ray sat in the darkness and thought about justice, about revenge, about the thin line between them. He'd spent 22 years fighting enemies overseas, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. He'd retired thinking that part of his life was over. Turned out, sometimes the fight came home. Sometimes the enemy wore expensive suits and sat in school board meetings. Sometimes, protecting your family meant destroying corrupt systems brick by brick. 2 weeks after the attack, the first trial began. Darren Foster, charged with aggravated assault. His lawyer tried to argue self-defense, tried to paint Freddy as the aggressor.